Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Today we're gonna work with some high-powered, high-performance AGP video cards. Specifically this one, the Sapphire HD 3850. This is likely the fastest, or at least one of the two fastest video cards out there. The second one that gets you talked about quite often is the Radeon 4670. Well, we will definitely have a discussion, but we will also look at some other cards, and I've got some benchmark results for three video cards, the 3850 and the GeForce 6800 GT, as well as the Radeon X 850 XT. So the idea is that we will pretend that we have a high performance AGP system, and we are in around 2004 or 2005, and we upgraded to a GeForce 6800 GT or Radeon X 850 XT, and then we were reluctant to upgrade, and we were waiting for something more powerful. And then around 2007, 2008, some more faster AGP video cards became available. So we're going to have a look at what sort of performance upgrade we are getting, if we're getting any upgrade, because we might be CPU limited. So we will be looking at resolution scaling and all that stuff. Now, you might have seen this video card in one of the recent pickups videos. It was provided to us by Electromine from Germany. As always, there's a 20% discount coupon down below in the description, and you can have a look if they have anything on offer that interests you. Now, they have since sold out on this particular video card, so they don't have any 3850s anymore. So I had a quick look on eBay what they are selling for, and on the lowest I've seen a really cheap one go for around 30 Australian dollars, but that really was an exception. At the high end, over $200. And most of the 3850s sell between 80 and 100 Australian dollars. So it's not a cheap video card, but that isn't a surprise. Usually the best of a certain technology, and this card is pretty much the best AGP video card, they will always attract a premium, and especially collectors are always chasing one of these cards. And we have some games running in the background today, both on this machine and on this video card. Both are Need for Speed games. We have Underground 2 and also Most Wanted. Both run at 1600 by 1200 with all details maxed out, and especially Most Wanted is a quite demanding game that needs a much faster computer than the specifications from back in the day suggest. So there are quite a few ways of testing these video cards. We have a choice of building something that is fairly authentic or period correct, as we call it, or you can go for a motherboard that is a little bit exotic. Some people call it Frankenstein motherboard, and you can get AGP motherboards that support the Core 2 Duo processor, and then you can really max out those video cards. I do have one of those motherboards, but I thought it was more interesting of going with a more authentic, high-end AGP system that is more realistic, and I call it's a proper AGP system, and seeing what kind of an upgrade performance you would get. So the system we're working with today is an Athlon 64 FX57, so that alone is fairly high-end. It's the fastest single-core Athlon FX for the socket 939. We've got an Asus motherboard, we've got 2 GB of RAM, we're running Windows XP, we've got a 600 watt power supply. Now this build, we've done a build video recently. The case got supplied to us by Thermaltake, and it comes with its own power supply. It's retro friendly, it's got 2 front bay devices. We can install an optical drive and a floppy disk drive. They're getting a little bit rare. Most modern cases don't have any front bay devices anymore. And we've got a SATA hard drive. So that's a pretty decent high-end AGP system for its time. And I can see someone who had a lot of disposable money back in the day, maybe he puts together something like this, and then for the next few years there weren't really that many upgrade options, but then the 3850 came out, and yeah, we will have a look at what performance difference we get between the GeForce 6800 GT, the Radeon X 850 XT, and finally the Sapphire HD 3850. The GPU in this video card is the RV670, produced on the 55 nanometer process. The card was launched in early 2008. The GPU runs at 669 megahertz, and we have 512 megabyte of memory, which is clocked at 829 megahertz, but it's DDR memory, so the effective clock speed doubles. We have 1658, and the memory interface is 256-bit, and that is higher than most other cards. So we're getting a very high memory bandwidth of 52.99 gigabytes per second. So at this point, I quickly want to talk about the Radeon HD 4670, which always gets mentioned when people talk about the 3850 being the world's fastest AGP video card. So looking at benchmarks out there, unfortunately this card doesn't work, so I wasn't able to do any tests myself, but looking in forums and on old benchmarks, the general consensus is that the 3850 is the more powerful card, especially the memory bandwidth is significantly faster, which helps. However, the 4670 is the newer graphics card. It runs cooler, and this one, for example, has an HDMI output, which might be interesting for capturing or for connecting it to a television like that. And because it's a more modern GPU, it also has more video acceleration technologies built in. And the other difference is it has 1 gigabyte of video memory. So that might come in handy when you play DirectX 10 titles, for example. But regardless, both video cards, the bottom line is both of them are very fast, and both of them are not easy and cheap to find on eBay. So let's take a closer look at the card. This model is from Sapphire, and there were only a few companies that actually released the 3850 with AGP. Power Color was another one. This is a single slot card, so it's very good if you have some other PCI expansion cards in your machine. We have 2 DVI outputs and also TV out. And interestingly enough, it needs a 8-pin PCI Express power connector. Not a problem with the case we are using. The case has 2 8-pin PCI Express power connectors, so that worked straightforward. But if you got a more, a retro PC with an older power supply, you might only have a 6-pin connector, and then you need to use an adapter. The GPUs on these high-end video cards, they're all based on PCI Express. So a bridge chip is required to connect them to the AGP interface. On the ATI Radeon cards, that chip has a name. It's called Rialto. It's a bit of a hard to pronounce name, so I'm just gonna refer to it as the bridge chip. Now, there is some kind of a pad around here, and that is mostly to protect the electric components around the chip. I'll show you on the 4670. It looks a little bit different here. The pad has been removed. This card was actually donated to me. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Apparently some of these resistors are missing, got pulled off, and I haven't. To be honest, I lack the skill and the experience to repair something like this. If you got any tips of how to approach this, let me know. I'm quite interested in learning that skill. I had a look on Banggood. They do sell some of these microscopes with cameras built in. That might be something, but yeah, I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone with working with SMD capacitors. But basically, if you get a card and it's got the pad around here, don't try to rip it off. You might be actually ripping off some of these components. The chip does get quite hot, 85 degrees apparently, according to some reviews on the internet, but it's not a concern. They just run hot and you don't have to worry about it. There is no active cooling or passive cooling required. NVIDIA also had PCI Express GPUs that they connected to the AGP interface with a bridge chip. This is a GeForce 6600 GT, and the bridge chip hides under this cooler here. They called it the HSI bridge. Now we're gonna have a look at some benchmarks very soon, but let's look at the competition that the 3850 is going up against. So here we have a GeForce 6800 GT. This is a very popular AGP video card. Decent performance, and definitely redeemed, NVIDIA redeemed themselves after the GeForce FX range. This is from MSI. We have VGA, DVI, and TV out. Interesting feature is it's got a manual fan speed override here, so you can just crank up the speed. The card is also nice and heavy, lots of copper going on inside, and it needs a Molex connector at the back. This is also one of the last NVIDIA cards that has native AGP in the GPU, so this one does not use an AGP bridge chip. And from ATI, we also have a high-end native AGP video card. This one launched a little bit later. This one is from 2005, whereas the 6800 GT is from 2004. This is the ATI Radeon X850 XT. Also requires a Molex power plug at the back. Dual slot cooler, a little bit lighter than the 6800, but it's got some copper cooling going on here. The fan has a very interesting sound, but it is a bit annoying. It definitely makes more noise than all the other cards. And in terms of outputs, we've got one DVI and one VGA. I had a few issues with the DVI output, not displaying anything on the monitor. However, VGA worked just fine. And a quick look at one of NVIDIA's high-end AGP video cards that do use the bridge chip. This is the BFG 7800 GS. Quite surprising in benchmarks. This is not that much faster than the 6800 GT, so it does need a little bit of overclocking to really distance itself. But with some decent clocks, this should be on the level of a 6800 Ultra and maybe a little bit faster. And before the 3850 launched, ATI did a few other AGP video cards with bridge chips. This is the X1950 Pro with a nice cooler here that blows most of the air out the back, dual DVI, TV out. And this one takes a standard 6-pin PCI Express power connector. Okay, we waited long enough. Let's have a look at some benchmarks. We've got 3D Mark First, 2001, 2003, and 2005. You can see at the bottom the green and the red one. That is for the 6800 GT and the X850 XT. The Radeon is a little bit in front. And then at the top, we've got the HD 3850. And you can see that initially in 2001 SE, it is a little bit faster, but we might be dealing with a CPU bottleneck here. And as we try out the newer 3D Mark versions, we can see the card pull ahead, and we're getting roughly double the performance in 03 and in 05. Far Cry is a game that is historically quite strong on the ATI Radeon cards, and we can see that here. At lower resolutions, we are pretty much CPU limited, and on the GeForce, it's only at 1600 by 1200 that this video card is losing performance, but the Radeon cards remain strong, and we're getting around 80-85 FPS, which is fantastic. So you can play that game maxed out, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Next up we have Halo, and with all the effects turned on, this is actually one demanding game. So we can see the GeForce basically at 800 by 600, we're getting around 130 FPS, and from there on performance goes down. The Radeon cards do a little bit better at 1024 by 768. We are still CPU limited, and then the X850 XT starts to lose performance, whereas the 3850 does a lot better. Even at 1600 by 1200, it is able to almost get the same performance as 800 by 600, and comparing to the other cards, once again we can see almost a 2x performance difference at the high resolution. The next game we have is Fear. This is one extremely demanding Windows XP game, and you can see all video cards lose performance as you crank up the resolution. But even at 800 by 600, we can see that this game is extremely demanding for the video card, and we can already see a huge difference between the 3850 and the other two cards. And that gap, it kind of stays the same, but no, it does widen a little bit at 1024 by 768 and 1280 by 1024. And then once we go to 1600 by 1200, the GeForce really struggles. We're getting only 30 FPS, whereas on the 3850, we're getting over 90. So that would have been an awesome upgrade if you had a 6800 GT and you got the 3850. So that's a great retro PC, but does it run Crysis? Yes, it does. So let's have a look at the performance. The 6800 GT definitely struggles. It starts below 30 and then it just gets worse. And at 1600 by 1200, that game just doesn't run smooth at all. both Radeon cards start off at more than 30 FPS at 800 by 600. The X850 XT then also dips in performance, whereas the 3850 is almost a straight line up to 1600 by 1200. So this is another game where a faster processor or a faster system at lower resolutions would give you even more performance. So you might as well, if you're stuck on such a machine with this processor, you might as well crank up the resolution to 1280 by 1024, and you still get around 40 FPS or so, which is not too bad for Crysis for a computer from around 2004 with a video card from 2008. And here we have Far Cry with eye candy features. So I've turned on 4x anti-aliasing as well as 16x anisotropic filtering, and we can see that the Radeon 3850 is still able to deliver playable performance even at 1600 by 1200. Now the benchmark is outdoors, lots of water, foliage, trees, so the performance is very demanding, but we still get almost 60 FPS. And that's really what this video card is for, playing those older games at high resolutions with eye candy features turned on that you simply can't do on the older AGP cards. So that was a look at a few performance benchmarks, and basically the bottom line is that this card makes sense if you've got a high resolution monitor or if you're interested in turning on anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering. But if you're playing at lower resolutions, then you're not going to see much difference compared to the 6800 GT or the X850 XT. Now we still have to talk about DirectX 10. So this card would work well with Windows Vista and DirectX 10 games. A lot of games back in the day when Vista came out, they received DirectX 10 feature patches. For example, BioShock has a few features you can turn on only under DirectX 10, as well as Crysis and a lot of other games. And that back in the day, that would have been a nice upgrade path, moving from Windows XP to Windows Vista, moving from DirectX 9 to DirectX 10. So there was definitely a lot of future potential with this video card. And a quick discussion about the drivers. Not every driver supports the AGP version, whereas the PCI Express versions are usually supported out of the box. And I had a look on the forums, and a lot of customers were upset back in the day that the newer Catalyst versions didn't support the AGP 3850. And there were some hotfix drivers as well. Now the driver I ended up using is Catalyst 8.3, so that's from March of 2008, and that supported this card natively. There are some workarounds in case your card doesn't work when you run the installer. You can sometimes install it through Device Manager manually, and there are also projects like the DNA driver or the Omega driver, and they usually have better support for cards like this. So there you have it, guys. This is the Sapphire HD 3850, the world's fastest AGP video card, and it really does take a decent processor to get it going, especially at lower resolutions. Even the Athlon 64FX57 up to 1280 by 1024 in most Windows XP games, the video card is still held back by the processor. So you really need a high resolution monitor. Very popular were these 22-inch 1680 by 1050, 16 by 10 aspect ratio monitors back in the day. I kind of remember that period, and that is likely a very good widescreen resolution for a video card like that. In terms of getting one of these video cards today, it is really a collector's video card. If you're looking at a video card with that sort of performance, to be honest, you're better off just going with PCI Express. You can likely get an entire motherboard video card bundle for the same price as this video card. But of course, that's not the same thing as owning one of these cards. So this is once again a collector's item more than a recommendation for a retro gaming PC build. And that's really it for this video, guys. As always, if you've got any interesting stories to tell about the 3850 or the whole PCI and AGP situations, did you hang on to the AGP bus for a little bit longer, or were you an early adopter and you switched to PCI Express? Do share your thoughts and experiences down below in the comments. Always eager to hear from you, and thanks for watching, guys, and that's it. See you soon in another video.